Hey everybody, today's episode is brought to you by QuickBooks Self-Employed. If you work for yourself, save up to 50% for an entire year on the new QuickBooks Self-Employed. It helps separate your business and personal expenses so you can quickly track what you spent for work and what you spent on yourself. QuickBooks Self-Employed helps take the guesswork out of estimated federal quarterly taxes. So come tax time, you know how much money to set aside for Uncle Sam and how much stays in your pocket. Try QuickBooks Self-Employed and receive 50% off at tryselfemployed.com/rich.
It is not up to your partner to make you feel good about yourself or make you feel worthy or realized or heard or loved. And if you release all of that nonsense between two people, a lot of the problems in the relationship simply disappear.
That is the lovely Julie Pyatt, and this is another edition of Ask Me Anything on the Rich Roll Podcast. The Rich Roll Podcast. Hey everybody, what are you doing? What's going on? Back on the podcast. It's Rich Roll here, your host, and I'm here with Julie today, Julie Pyatt, the lovely Julie Pyatt, my wife. Say hello.
Hi, everyone.
And this is another edition of Ask Me Anything on the RRP. So thanks for stopping by, you guys.
We're back already.
We are back already. So if you've been listening all along, then you know what this show is all about. Usually my typical shtick, week in, week out, is I engage the best, most pioneering, paradigm-breaking, and often revolutionary minds and personalities that span the full spectrum of health, wellness, fitness, medicine, nutrition, spirituality, psychology, athletic performance, inspiration, excellence, anything else? Did I miss any category?
I think you've covered it.
And why do I do this? Well, I do this so that we can mine the insights provoked to help all of us live and be better and ultimately help us all unlock and unleash our best, most authentic selves. So what can I say? This is a diversion on that theme, I guess, because this is the question and answer version of the podcast. So anyway, staying true to the 2 episodes per week format, we're back at you with more questions and more subjects to talk about. And I think probably the best way to kick it off is to let you guys know that Julie and I just yesterday celebrated our 12th anniversary
Of marriage.
of being married in wedded bliss. Yeah. And how long, but we've been together many years in addition to
How
that.
many before that? 4 years
it's
before?
It's murky.
It's murky.
It's a little unclear.
What's the year? 2015? Is that the year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was like 98, 99.
No, I don't think 98, 99
It's
maybe.
16 or 17. I'm not sure. This is
Really?
what happens when you're approaching 50.
Excuse me?
What?
You're approaching 50.
Yeah, I'm approaching 50.
said
So
you're
that's why I
approaching
said it's
50.
murky. I'm speaking from...
He's very murky.
I'm speaking about myself here.
Too many podcasts.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but yeah, so we had been together for several years before we got married. But
Actually, we were married in a private ceremony by a Mexican shaman with a huge fire. Remember that?
Yeah, we've had lots of sort of ceremonies around our relationship that I guess you could fairly characterize as alternative weddings leading up to the wedding.
No, but we had one specific
Yeah, like
one that
so.
was specifically a wedding with
Yeah.
just you and me.
No, we
didn't tell anybody.
We were in Mexico at Hotel Lito, and it was a yoga retreat, right? And there was like a shaman, and we did like a sweat lodge, and then he performed a ceremony. So technically, that's when we got married. I can't remember what year that was, though.
I can't either.
See, so you're murky too.
Who cares?
All right. So anyway, but here we are, and in our Western culture, we will mark the calendar by the year that we got married at our house. And so, of course, that experience and celebrating that experience 12 years hence, causes some reflection on our relationship and how we got there. And there seems to be growing interest in our relationship and how we make it work. So I think kind of thematically, on a top level, sort of way, we want to talk about relationships today and mine that subject a little bit, right?
Let's go in.
How are you feeling about being married to me for that long?
I'm feeling really good about it.
Is it good?
Yeah, I think it's great.
You don't want out? Are you looking for the back door?
Not now. Not right now, this moment.
No. Anytime in the
I'm not saying I've
recent
never had that moment.
Okay.
But no, that's not true. Actually, I joke, but I'm actually...
Which part, what's not true? That you haven't been looking for the exit?
No. Looking for the exit is kind of over. I mean, exit from what?
I don't know. From this whole dynamic.
From relationship, that if you could just break away, then it could be better.
And be free.
No, I mean, I think that, no. I think that we've experienced a lot of amazing transformation together, and the big transformation happens when you're in a relationship. You know, it can be difficult, it can be grueling, and it can draw you to a precipice. But it's harder than living on your own and just doing whatever you want to do all the time.
Yeah,
I think
in recovery they say if you want to get very familiar with your character defects, get in a relationship, because suddenly they'll all percolate to the surface very, very quickly, right? And if you're alone, you don't have to face that stuff. There's no feedback, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it would be like in a yogi sense, like, you know, in a cave, it's easy to be enlightened, but it's a lot harder to be enlightened in the world when you're having to deal with people. You know, and there are other aspects of that are also difficult. Like, you know, there's, there are positives and negatives, or I guess things that are more difficult and easier in both scenarios.
What's more difficult about being alone?
Well, more difficult about being alone would be being alone. Like, you know, So there's something that's, I think as human beings, at least in general, we like to be connected. You know, we like intimacy. We like to be able to share our lives with people. I think there's a lot of research that, you know, people live longer that are in healthy, committed relationships. And you can correct me if you think that I've misspoken, but I think that's sort of common knowledge. And so I think that it would be those things. You know, I imagine living in a cave, you know, has its drawbacks.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Has its downside.
Well, I mean, just to set the stage, I mean, I think that you know, I posted on Instagram and Facebook like a picture of you and just saying, you know, celebrating 12 years of marriage, and, you know, basically it's a drastic understatement to say that you've made me a better man. I just said a bunch of nice stuff, right? And so then
Did you mean it?
Did you see it? Did you
no,
not see it?
I did, honey. It was beautiful. Thank you very much.
But then you get there's a bunch of comments, right? And now because we're doing the podcast together more, and you're much more out in the world, you know, than you were when I wrote Finding Ultra, people are getting to know you better, and there seems to be a lot more interest in our relationship, and people are saying, oh, you're this power couple, your relationship is so inspiring and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's easy to project on that this idea that, you know, it's just been smooth sailing the entire time, and that we've never had our bumps along the road.
Right.
And I think that would be, a drastic mischaracterization of the arc of our relationship.
That would not be true or authentic.
Right. So,
sure.
So, you know, why don't we like piece that together a little bit to provide like the landscape, and then talk about, you know, how we think of and kind of advise people who come to us with questions about relationships.
Do you think we should have had a therapist here to mediate this public therapy session we're about to embark on?
End up in a huge fight.
No.
Which would be, that would be good podcasting.
That would be fantastic reality TV. No, I'm actually not a huge advocate of couples therapy, and I can get into that later. But no, we'll do this face to face. Right.
I think we're in a groove right now, and we're aligned, and we're seeing the world, you know, through a similar lens. But it wasn't always that way. And anybody who knows our story knows that, you know, when we first got together, I was in a very different place, and our interests, you know, sort of were starting to diverge a little bit, at least with respect to my lifestyle habits, I suppose, and things you were interested in versus what I was interested in. And I have changed. I've changed a lot, right? And so how do you get from A to Z on that?
You're asking me?
Yeah, well, let's retrace it a little bit.
Well, I mean, so beginning when? Like when when we met in a yoga class and you presented to me that you were spiritually inclined?
I was spiritually inclined. That's why I'm sitting here right now, interested in all these things, right?
I'm teasing.
It's harder for a guy.
It's harder for a guy.
Yeah. So, no, I met you in a yoga class, and the reason that I was in a yoga class was
to meet me.
Well, it was twofold. Yeah, it was to meet you. But I was, fresh out of rehab, and I'd been given a toolbox of, sort of different ways of approaching my life. And yoga was something that I wanted to explore, to kind of expand my horizons. And now, look, it didn't hurt that the yoga class was packed with beautiful women, and that was certainly alluring, and that got me to make sure that I made the class every evening. But it takes what it takes.
Motivation.
It's the same reason, like, I picked out certain AA meetings where I know, there'd be a lot of young people and attractive women, like whatever it takes to get you to the meeting, right? And now I don't approach it the same way, but that was my entry point. And I wouldn't have started going to yoga had I not had some base level of interest in that. And I remember at the time I was working in a corporate law firm, and I was miserable. And I remember that I would even if my work wasn't done, like I would leave my suit jacket on my chair and just leave, Century City at 4 o'clock or whatever, many hours before I was meant to, and go to Santa Monica and go to a yoga class. Sometimes I'd come back to my office, but I wouldn't tell anyone where I went. I was just sort of escaping. And I knew that somehow, for some reason, that I would find answers by, sort of pursuing this path or this quest, right? And I did meet you there, and now here we are, right? But I think it's also fair to say that once I met you, that my interest in yoga was, somewhat diminished. It waned a little bit.
Waned slightly.
It's the ebb and flow of my life, right? I go in and out of being interested in certain things that are probably more prominently, a part of your life than they are of mine. And I think that, I got very, at the time, I was very intent upon repairing all the wreckage that I had created as a result of my drinking and using, and I wanted to get my career back on track. And I was very attached to, this sort of illusion or myth of the American dream. Like I have to, make my way in the world professionally, and I've got to achieve these certain things and prove to everybody that, I'm worthy and be, self-sufficient and self-supporting and all of that kind of stuff. But I was doing it in a way that was like contrary to, I think, my authentic self, right? So it was a process of jamming a square peg into a round hole for many, many years and not reaping really the rewards that were promised, and becoming progressively more disenchanted and resentful as a result of that process. And so to compensate for that, I would act out in other ways that didn't involve drinking or using drugs. And my first drug of choice, both before and after my drinking, has been food, right? So I would gorge on fast food as a way of modulating and medicating my emotional state. And you were sort of standing on the sidelines observing that, and for years trying to, kind of assist me or aid me with providing me perhaps a better way of approaching these issues, but to no avail.
Yes, it fell on deaf ears, for sure. But getting back to the room before we go into this, because I'm trying to touch on, more what are the aspects of fate, or what are the aspects of destiny? Destiny in when you look at like a love relationship, or people talk about soulmates. I refer to you as my soulmate, my heart and soulmate. So what was it about? What quality was it in you when you said, you posted last night, the first time you saw me, you knew that I was your partner?
Yeah, I did.
So what explain that? Like, what was the sense in you? What were you drawing upon? How could you know that? I was just a physical form in a class.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I mean, it's a room full of beautiful women, but for some reason you stood out. You had this beautiful, lithe body, and you had these enticing orange and blue sort of strands in your hair. And I don't know, I was fixated on it. And I was like, I just couldn't move my attention off of it for some inexplicable reason. I mean, certainly there was sexual attraction, right? Like I was attracted to you in a physical way, but I'd never spoken to you, so I didn't know anything about your personality or your circumstance. I didn't know that you were getting out of a marriage. I didn't know that you had children. I just knew like I was allured by your presence, and I just felt this gravitational pull that that was it, really. I couldn't put any more of it to words other than that.
And this persisted over the entire, I think it was an 8-month or a year period before you and I exchanged any real words.
Yeah,
so this
I
persisted.
I bided my time.
You're silently,
I was playing the long game.
You were playing the very long game.
I played the long game, yeah.
Always the ultra endurance athlete.
Right, exactly. I completely ultraman the whole thing. So
that's funny. I mean, that's very, very interesting to me, and it's something. The reason that I bring it up to talk about it is because it was. I saw you in the room. I knew you were in the room. We had mutual friends, and we kind of had a cool community that we were hanging out with, and sort of. Even though I wasn't speaking to you directly, there would be, peripheral parties or dinners or things where, you might be there, sort of in the back somewhere. But then later, when we met on a yoga retreat, actually, I was at the retreat. You were late getting there. You came up like a day late, and you arrived. It was like a hippie yoga retreat in Santa Barbara. And I remember just thinking, oh, there's Rich, and all right, so I'll go talk to him, say hi. And we struck up a conversation, and within a half hour, I knew that I knew you, like in a much deeper way.
Yeah, but if you had to articulate what that was, what is that?
Well, for me, I mean, for me, it was that I knew you from other lifetimes. I mean, it was a familiarity. I mean, you can talk about that familiar thing. You know how you meet people and you're like, I feel like I know that person. But I mean, this was very strong. And I was a little bit annoyed and a little bit like taking a breath because it was not my plan. I didn't want to get in a relationship at that time. I was getting out of a 10-year marriage. And my plan was to date whoever I wanted, when I wanted, and to just not be in a relationship. And then when I met you, when I spoke to you, I was like, oh, like this is a marrying guy. This isn't a dating guy.
Well, just to be clear, I had different plans as well. I'd gotten out of a, cataclysmic wedding/marriage scenario that wounded me terribly, and I was in no hurry to get into a relationship, which I think is part of why I played the long game. But also, on paper, my intention was I'm going to find, somebody who's younger than me, somebody with no baggage and just simple. And, that's what I was looking for. And, here was somebody who was older than me. She was getting divorced. She had children. I mean, it couldn't be more complicated. Like, the warning sign should have been like run in the other direction from somebody like that. That was like the last thing that I felt like I needed at that time, especially since I was newly sober. I had a year sobriety, and I was still in the process of piecing my life back together. So to invite somebody into my equation with, perhaps on a surface level, somebody you could say who, was navigating their own sort of life issues just didn't seem wise. Right.
Right. And on the other side of that,
but that's not how it works.
Yeah, but on the other side of that, me being the mother of 2 young boys and you being with only a year of sober days. Okay, so
this is not a good idea.
It's not a good idea at all, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing logical about that. I mean, why would I invite that? Where was the stability there? Mm-hmm. Where was there, when, there was no promise of anything, really. Right.
So the point is it didn't make sense at all. But this is not how these things work, right? And so here we are 12 years later. And like I said, we've had our ups and downs, and, we had moments where we didn't think we were going to make it. And that was precipitated by, clash in personality and also fueled by, external issues like, financial duress and the like. But somehow we were able to, get to the other side of all of those things.
I have to just do a timeout here. We never were going to break up over financial duress.
That's true.
Ever. So that was never
But I think
the issue.
when you're under financial duress, it puts strain on both people, which allows other things to kind of flare up.
But to be clear, we were unified after that point. So there was never a time in our entire dark night of transformation that either one of us were thinking of bailing. This happened before the financial collapse, right? That's when we were questioning.
Yeah, that's true. So what in your mind precipitated that?
Well, I mean, there was only one moment. I mean, I think it was my frustration with your inability to embody positive life habits that centered around food, that centered around being fearless, connected to yourself at a deeper level. I think it was those issues, and the fact that this whole thing was causing this paralysis. It was causing it, it was causing it in your career. It was causing it in many different areas, and it was not changing. And so this is the period that I describe when I was, begging you to take my hand. Like, I tried everything. I tried cheering for you, reasoning with you, intellectualizing with you, screaming at you, threatening you. I tried every single thing I possibly could.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. And then I think just one moment, I can't remember exactly what the exact catalyst was, but I believe Mathis was a young baby, and I believe, I asked you to actually leave the house. And it was, I think we lasted a day.
Yeah, I left.
You were
for
gone a day.
I left for a day, and I came back the next afternoon.
That's right. So, I mean,
but that was that was our defining moment of whether we were going to stay together or not.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, I had been in a very, very karmic, ugly, horrifying, physically abusive relationship that. It went on and off and on for a 7-year period during which I was actually free of it for a year and a half in the center of it. And then my following marriage, it was this fairy tale, beautiful marriage, which produced my boys. It was of a certain level of awareness. It was very beautiful, and it completed. There was no more work to be done in that relationship this lifetime. So it completed. And here I was, with you again, married again with a young child. And, I had to really, really look deep in my heart. Like, what about this man? Is this, can I weather through these other details, or are we going to go our own way? And I think at that time, it became very clear to me that I did not want to split from you. Mm-hmm. I was clear about that.
Mm-hmm. And then when did the epiphany come in of this idea that you speak of divine love and letting go and allowing me to my process? That was really the energy shift that allowed me to then, flip the mirror and take responsibility and make the change that, was the sort of, first step in, where we are now.
I want to say in my intuition that I believe that when we split up was somewhere in the month of February. And when I actually received that teaching and it actually came into me fully, might have been August. Uh-huh. So it was some preparatory months, like still some months of us trying to figure it out. And yeah, so maybe, 6 to 8 months after that.
Right. Okay. And so all of this is kind of foundational to, this is the Ask Me Anything Q&A episode, right? So there isn't one specific question, but we've gotten a lot of email. Well, Julie has one that we're going to get to in a minute. But basically, there's been a lot of emails that have come in that kind of address in general terms, how do you know when you should break up with someone, and how do you know when, like you said, a relationship has been completed and it's time to move on?
Well, I think that, everything's so unique, but I think it's at least clear to me that there has to be some common. I can only speak to what were the things about between you and me that made me know that I wanted to stick it out. The things were that we shared a lot of the same interests, that we enjoy each other on a daily basis, moment to moment to moment. We have, a similar humor. We share creative tastes. We kind of like to do some of the same things in life. I mean, some of the things are very, very different. But I guess I kind of felt like, of all the people that I knew in the world, I liked hanging out with you. Like, I enjoy hanging out with you. And I think the second thing that was very, very key for me as well is the depth and the authenticity and the intimacy of our sexual connection was definitely key.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go there.
Okay. Well, we have to, right? Isn't that the...
Yeah, well, I think the litmus test is, if you really want to drill down on this, is, a lot of these questions come in and they're really about, like, I'm in a relationship and I'm really into kind of, whether it doesn't matter what it is, but let's say, a lot of them are around food and wellness. Like, I'm into the message that you're putting out. I'm trying to get healthy and I'm focused on this, and my partner or my husband or my wife or whoever it is not interested, right? They're not into it. And I feel like we're not connecting, and, I don't know if I can, tolerate this any longer. And, how can I get them to come and see my way of things or come to my side? And I think really the test is, if you can get to that place of divine love where you say, I don't need this person to change, and I can love them exactly as they are, detached from any need or desire for them to be any different than they are. Like, if you can truly embrace that idea, then that would be a good indication that that's somebody that you can stay with, right? But if you feel like you just can't, like, this person it's just intolerable for you to be in a relationship with someone who is not going to do X, Y, or Z, and it's not going to work for you, then that would dictate the alternative.
Yeah, and I think that, something that all of us will find, and I think the listeners will find, is that, we have this condition in human love where we meet somebody, we project an image onto them of who we think they are, and then some years later or some months later, when they turn out not to be that fantasy projection that we created within ourselves, then we get disillusioned with them, angry with them, and, you're not who I thought you were. And it's really this moment of insanity. But if you can look at your relationship and you can stop the practice of expecting your partner to fulfill yourself, to fulfill your happiness in many, many different areas. It is not up to your partner to make you feel good about yourself or make you feel worthy or realized or heard or loved. And if you release all of that nonsense between two people, and then I think a lot of the problems in the relationship simply disappear from simply doing that. And how do you do that? In my case, you do that by developing a spiritual practice. So the relationship with God or the creative force or divine mother or whatever you want to call it, creation, the universe, that's the first relationship. And then the marriage is below that. So it's almost like you put yourself first, and you understand that. One thing I used to tell myself when I would get frustrated with, finances or whatever, is, in whatever the thing is, but in relationship to you and me, is that you are not my source. I am a creation of God, and source is my source. God is my source. So eliminating that already relieves probably at least 50% of the issues. I think so many of us are in relationships and we're looking at our partner like, you're supposed to make me feel like X.
Right. Well, it's like the line in Jerry Maguire, like, you complete me, right? And I think we have an epidemic wherein people are searching for that person who are that is going to be the solution to whatever ails them, right? So if I can just get that boyfriend or that girlfriend, then I'll be happy, or that will fulfill me, and then I'll feel like a whole person. And that's a lot of energy and pressure to put on another person that ultimately is going to disappoint you.
It's not going to work
in that endeavor, right? And that disappointment is going to lead to resentment and anger, and it's going to fuel all kinds of problems, right? So I think it is going back to, and look, this is the first thing that you learn in sobriety. This is what I learned in rehab. Like, your relationship with your higher power has to come before everything. It comes before your relationship, your job, your kids, everything. And it sounds like a selfish thing. Like, how could you put that before, the person that I love? But that is the way to being self-sufficient and content within yourself, so that you can then bring something to the relationship to contribute to it. And I think it's also a perspective of, what are you contributing to the relationship, as opposed to what are you getting out of it? Like, what am I going to get out of being with this person? How is this person going to make me feel better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, what we always say about, turning the magnifying glass back on yourself. Like, in any situation, the only thing you can control is what is going on within your own being. So by turning the focus on yourself, you can be committed to your self-development, your evolution. You can, strive and reach deeper within through meditation, and then, attempt to create more and more things, or more and more experiences, I would say. The answer is always within. It's never in another person. The answer to your unrest, or the answer to your happiness, or the answer to your creative connection, the answer to your love is within yourself. And one thing that I discovered, which was really very profound for me, is that I don't believe that there is one soulmate for each of us on the planet. I believe there are many. And I guess, being that I've been married 3 times, I am a relationship expert. So everybody listen up. No, I've had 3 weddings. No, this is what I discovered. I discovered through, and I've been in love more times than 3 times, because I've had some serious relationships. And I think overall that I've truly been in love maybe 5 or 6 times.
Now I'm starting to feel bad about myself.
Sorry, don't, honey. I love you, but I'm with you now.
But listen, it is, the solution to every problem resides within yourself, in the sense that, you can't control other people. You can't control external circumstances. The only thing you can do is control yourself, right? And you can control your experience of external events by modulating how you perceive them and how you react to them, right? So everything just is. There's no judgment on anything that's happening in the physical 3-dimensional reality in which we all live our lives, right? And whether you're a happy person or a miserable person, all is dictated by how how you process and perceive your environment, right? Because you're the one who's placing these judgments on everything, right? So to the extent that you can do that internal work, whether it's through meditation or whatever MO suits you best, that is the recipe for solving your dilemma, right? Because look, if externalities were the recipe to happiness, then the richest people in the world, or the most powerful people in the world, or the longest married people, or what have you, would be the happiest people. But of course, we all know that that's not how it works. Some of the richest people, there's happy rich people, but there's miserable rich people, right? So it's all about how they perceive their environment. What is their relationship to the external world that dictates how they are going to experience that. And so the way out of whatever misery that you're feeling is to shift your perspective on it. And that can only be done by doing the heavy lifting of that internal work that we all don't want to do, right? We all want the hack, right? What's the hack? Well, if I get the new car, or I get the new job, or I move to a different city,
or you get a new boyfriend.
Or you go to the mall and you buy a new pair of jeans, or, a new pair of sneakers, or whatever it is. Consumer decisions are driven by that. And Madison Avenue is well aware of this very human tendency. And they prey upon that to deliver this idea, this message that if you do indeed purchase this product, that it will inherently hold the solution to whatever ails you, right? And that is a delusion that most people just take to their grave.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And it's sad and not connected and I think kind of empty. But getting back to the point that I was going to make before we went here.
You're acting like I interrupted you.
I was just about ready to give my great morsel of wisdom.
Okay. Well, you have to like cue me that.
Okay. So
I didn't know that.
No. So anyway, so what I discovered from these relationships, and the many relationships that I had, and the fact that I had fallen in love so many times. And I think it was in the moment of my last divorce where I realized that my work in this life with my boy's father had come to a culmination. And I realized as I was meditating one evening, I realized that this love that I had experienced with all these different humans was in fact my love. It didn't belong to any of my partners. It belonged to me. It was emanating from me. So the love that I felt when I met you and I fell in love with you, it was like, oh, there it is. My familiar friend, my love. It's mine. So no matter what happens in your life, no matter what partner you're with or what breakups you go through, no one can take that from you, because it exists within you. And even at a deeper point, at a deeper place of awareness, you will discover that that is the essence of who you are, is pure love. So within a relationship, you get to have that reflected back to you. You get to experience that because you have somebody to like bounce it off of. And that's what we've done so beautifully together. And that's that's what's so meaningful about being in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And, in thinking about your relationship with Lou, the boy's dad, you mentioned that, after this 10-year period of being with him, that the relationship was complete, right? And I think it conjures up this idea of success and failure in relationships, right? And we feel like, there's this social construct that if a relationship doesn't work out, that it's a failure. And even though there was sort of a crossroads in which both of you realized that, you were going to take other paths in your life, I know for a fact that you don't perceive that relationship as a failure, but you perceive it as a success, even though it did come to a conclusion. And so I think it's important to, reframe this idea of what a relationship is, can be, should be, or was, and really, cast aside this idea of failure or success, right?
Yeah.
So that if relationships serve different purposes, for, like as you say, for whom and when, right? A relationship that you were in many years ago might not suit you now, and every relationship that you engage in has some purpose. Now, whether that is a good purpose or a bad purpose, or in retrospect you look back on it as saying that was a positive or negative experience for you, certainly by all accounts it was a learning experience. And some relationships, just because you're in a relationship, does not dictate that has to be a relationship you take to your grave, right? So,
well, I think the whole idea that, again, like there's one soulmate that exists for you, and you're going to fall in love, and you're going to be together forever, and you're going to, ride away in the carriage, and it's happily ever after. It's just not real. It's not. And don't get me wrong, I'm a very committed partner. When I'm in a marriage, you can bet if I'm married, I'm really in it. That means I really love the person, or I'm in a karmic hell that I'm working out, which that was an early part of my life. But I never thought that I would be married once. I don't know why, thank God. But to me, I have been in a series of very committed relationships that have been transformational in different ways. And why anybody would call a marriage a failure that lasted, any amount of time, but, in my case, 10 years and produced, two of the most beautiful beings I've ever come in contact with. Like, how do you call that a failure? It was not a failure. It was a massive success. And it was true and real while it was happening. But the difference with me is when it's complete, I can't stay in it. Like, I'm not, it's like, when the work is done or when our interaction is over, I can't stay in something and lie. I'm unable to do that. So
But I think a lot of people do. I mean, I think a lot of people stay in relationships way longer than they should because there is this social contract that if you extricate yourself from it, that somehow that means that you failed, right? And you carry that scarlet letter around as if you did something bad, right? Mm-hmm. But the truth is that's not how it works, and many relationships out there persist longer than they should, and so. If you're in a relationship that is not functional and you can't get to that place of, perhaps some level of divine love where you can accept your partner for who they are and believe that you're on a mutual trajectory that is serving you both and you're both benefiting from that relationship, then, I think it's okay to give yourself permission to exit.
Of course. And your life is not a failure. Our life is a journey. It's not a game with an endpoint. It's a process of becoming. And even my abusive relationship that was just wrought with, so much dysfunction and so much darkness. I mean, really, really gnarly. I don't know if I'll ever write about it. But even that, I consider it an aspect of my mastery. It was a stage that I had to go through, and luckily I did, and I persevered, and I survived, and I rose out of it, and I never repeated the formula again. Mm-hmm. But it was a hell, a living hell on earth. There's no other way to talk about it. But you can't, your life is one whole process. I can't cut it out and act like it didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like it did. It's part of what led me to this moment. It's part of what allows me to understand, probably some of the difficulties in our relationship, which it's all informed me. I've learned from all my experiences. And yeah, in my case, I just don't, I don't think that the goal is, that you hang on for dear life with white knuckles to the end and say, we made it and we were married 80 years, but we were miserable for 60.
Right. Well, it raises a broader issue of, this game of life, right? And there is this persistent notion that, there are rules and hey, you go to the good school and you get the good job with the good 401k and you get the house with the 2 cars and as you kind of continue up this ladder, marriage and relationships are part of that. And anytime you try to sort of extricate yourself from any of these parameters, you run the risk of being socially ostracized and judged and all of these things, as if it is this game where we're all trying to get to the destination intact without making any mistakes and do it cleanly and say, I played the game well, but
right.
That's really not, my evolution has been about dismantling that idea and learning that those rules are really just a complete illusion. They're such a small, that's such a small spectrum of the overall bandwidth of how you can live your life. And it's only internally that I would put that pressure on myself to say I have to follow these rules. Mm-hmm. And it's a relief when you can let go of that and say, nobody's in control here. Mm-hmm. There's no boss. You can make your own rules, but it's your own fear and perhaps shame that holds you back, right? So you speak very freely about this relationship that you were in that was abusive, and you do it without any shame. Whereas most people, that would be their deep, dark secret that they wouldn't talk about. And I think, holding on to that, if you kind of allow that to fester privately, that starts to come out sideways in other ways in your life. But you own it, you talk about it freely, and you've been able to leverage that as a growth experience, right? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to grow. Right.
And I think that goes back to applying a divine perspective to your entire life. It's like I not only speak about it freely, I have no animosity or hatred or residual negativity that is living inside of me.
So how did you get to that point?
Well, it was rough in the beginning. It was pretty hard because I really suffered, and I really had been emotionally and physically hurt. And, I think at one point somebody asked me, someone asked me this question, well, how hard did he hit you? That was always one that kind of got me. And it's like, when you've been, any kind of abuse, like it doesn't matter. It's more the emotion, of being like, let's just say, that you were slapped on the face, like by somebody, abusively. It doesn't matter if they draw blood. It's the way it feels against your being. It's so violent, So it was hard in the beginning because I just couldn't reconcile, a justification of where that energy was coming from. And it wasn't till very much later in my process, I would have recurring dreams that like he wouldn't leave me alone, or he would be attached to my leg, and I would wake up screaming like, I want him to leave me. But then later on, I sort of came full circle around to understand that, in a human life, we all play roles in each other's lives that are catalysts for certain kinds of learning and transformation. And, that experience definitely led me into a deep, deep meditation, a deep connection, actually with Jesus was an energy that I was connecting to during that time. And, that was really a lifeline for me, a big lifeline for me. So later on, I had like a prophetic dream where I had an interaction with him in another plane, and there was forgiveness, and it was clear.
That was it. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, it was simple as that. I mean, I hadn't seen him in years and years, like over 15 years or something. And then in 1 month, all these people from that lifetime showed up in my life, from that section of my life, people I hadn't seen in I don't know what. It was weird. But I ran into him, and I thought, oh, well, maybe this means I should call him and we should have lunch. And I remember I said it on the podcast earlier, but someone hadn't listened to that episode. So I asked a spiritual teacher of mine, should I? And is this a sign? And he was like, no. Like, what do you want to create more karma? And I was like, got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't. But I'm cool, and I really do believe that we all play roles in each other's life. And, he offered me an amazing, transformative experience, even though it was unpleasant for me. I know that at some point, everything is divine. Everything has a divine purpose. And I have enough faith and trust in myself as a soul to know that if I agreed to the interaction, then, I had a part in it. And so I'm not a victim, put it that way.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, why don't we get to this question that you have in front of you? But before that, we got a little housekeeping we got to do. So, babe, how do you feel about shaving?
I love it. I actually love it when you shave.
You do?
That's actually not true.
You're such a liar.
I love you with a beard, but when you shave, I like the design of that razor that you have.
Yes, Harry. So,
it's very
cool. My beard is coming in pretty gray these days.
Which I
you
love.
Like that?
Please,
it's okay.
Please grow a beard.
It's getting super gray. I used to really dislike shaving, especially the experience of shopping for shaving gear, because if you go to the CVS, the pharmacy around here, I don't know if it's specific to Los Angeles, but everything is on lockdown, as if you're like a heroin addict trying to get your heroin.
You're going to steal those blades.
Yeah, like if you go to get the blades, you got to go find the clerk who's got to come and unlock the thing, and then half the time I would buy the blades and bring them home, and they were the wrong ones. They didn't fit the thing that I had, and they're ridiculously expensive. So the whole process is like a giant hassle, and you feel like a criminal when you're buying this stuff. And so either you're paying too much or you're getting cheap ones, and then you're cutting your face wide open, which is terrible, right? So what the cool thing is that Harry's has solved this problem, and they came on board as a sponsor on the show quite a long time ago, and I've been using their products ever since, and it's really kind of like a whole new ball game since I don't have to go to the pharmacy anymore to buy my stuff. So this was a company, Harrys.com, started by two guys passionate about creating a better shaving experience for all men. And the cool thing is there's no trade-off in it. The products are really cool. They have a nice weight to them. The packaging is super nice. It's all very bespoke and modern in kind of this hipster kind of way. And because it was so inexpensive, I figured it would be, not as good. But I actually found that the shave is superior, and that's the truth. So now, what a relief it is to never have to go to the drugstore again, or overpay, or wait, or deal with all the hassle. And the reason that they've been able to do this is they bought a blade factory in Germany that's been crafting some of the world's highest quality blades for nearly a century, and they cut out the middlemen. So they're able to offer an amazing shave at a fraction of the price of drugstore brands. So you can pick up your starter kit. It's just $15. It includes a razor, 3 blades, and your choice of Harry's shave cream or foamed shave gel. I like the gel better. That's just me. And as an added bonus, you can get $5 off your first purchase with my code ROLL, ROLL. So after using my code, you can get an entire month's worth of shaving for just $10. That's crazy, because when you buy it in the drugstore, I don't know how much it is, but it's like sometimes like $40 to buy those blades or whatever. Plus, shipping is always free, which is amazing. So, that's always the limiter, right? All the shipping costs. So go to harrys.com now, and Harry's will give you $5 off if you type in my code ROLL with your first purchase. That's HARRYS.com and enter coupon code ROLL at checkout for $5 off the starter set, and start shaving smarter today.
I love that. I do love that company. Actually, the boys use Harry's also.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
It's cool.
All the young men in our house use Harry's.
There's a lot of young men in our house. How many young men do we have?
There's more now.
Yeah, I know.
Does Andrew use Harry's too? He must.
I don't know.
We're just
if
on
he's
the
not,
same.
I'll hook him up.
Got to hook him up.
Right.
It's great design, and I think it's less plastic, isn't it? Or am I just...
Well, the handle is like this nice metal. They have a couple different varieties, I think, but the one I have is like
metal one.
It's like a heavy chrome. It has a nice weight to it.
And it's sustainable, yet like you keep it and you just replace the blades, right? It just seems like there's so much plastic in the CVS stuff. It freaks me out. I'm getting really sort of losing my patience with all the plastic.
Plastic in general.
Yeah, actually planetarily.
Right.
It's starting to really grind me a little bit, and so I've...
Yeah, well, when you have young kids, the amount of plastic that you invite into your home without even knowing it is just insane.
It's just shocking. Just hand me down. I don't even buy it. People just drop it off. I have to start refusing drop-offs with people's stuff. And also I've just become militant about not taking bags. I'm just carrying things. I can't handle the plastic. It's really bothering me. So I like Harry's for that reason.
Cool.
It's cool.
Me too. All right, so let's get to this email.
Okay, so this is from Jeremy Bell. Jeremy sent me an email quite a long time ago asking about relationships. And
is he cool with using his full name?
Well, he is now, because I've told everybody. Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. No, it was cool, and I saved it because he actually took a lot of time to actually think about it. And he was saying... there's not a lot of there's not a lot of info out there about healthy relationships and how people got there. And so he was curious about knowing more about Rich and my journey. And we've already answered some of the questions. So he asked me specifically, what were your thoughts while Rich was doing his window diet? Mm-hmm. So
what were your thoughts?
My inner thoughts, my inner private thoughts. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way he looked. I didn't like the way you looked. I'm telling him to his face. Yeah.
So for those who maybe are new to the podcast, the window diet is actually, that term was coined by Osher, our friend Osher.
You better give credit.
I know.
To
so I want to
Osher.
make sure that he gets
Osher,
credit.
you're a genius.
But I told him I was going to steal it, and I use it all the time.
He steals from you every day. Who cares? Who
window,
knows what he's saying
diet,
on The Bachelor in Australia?
For the few of you who might not know, the window diet is when you drive your car up to a fine dining establishment and roll the window down, and they hand you food, and that's what you eat. So basically, fast food, junk food diet.
So
and when I go give my talk and I show the before picture, which is also in the book Finding Ultra, like I definitely have that kind of round head and like puffy face and kind of puffed out body. But people say like, well, you didn't look that bad. Like you weren't. It wasn't like you were 400 pounds or anything like that. And I always say no. I've never characterized myself as having been morbidly obese or anything like that. I just was hefty and I was carrying around like a heaviness. Like I looked at like a guy who works in a law firm too much, right? Like just, riding the elevator up and down and not really taking care of yourself.
You didn't look like a guy I wanted to be with. That's the truth of the matter. Yeah. So, I was watching this thing sort of unfold before my eyes. It was kind of like, whoa, look at that. And it was not only that, but you had sort of like a river of pus coming out of your eyes. You would eat like 2 pizzas, maybe 3, sometimes 3 extra large pizzas.
I don't know if I ever ate that much.
Really?
I could
Two?
I can definitely put down 2 large Domino's or Pizza Hut pizzas.
Extra large
That's,
or whatever.
Like, not a problem.
So I think you're out of balance. You might have been doing 2.5 or 3.
I could eat 4 or 5 ultimate cheeseburgers from Jack in the Box.
That's so gross.
I know.
Okay, so you were eating like this, and you would wake up, and because you're allergic to gluten, and your whole eyes would be completely puffed. You had like a puffy head with like mucus dripping out of your eyes, literally. Right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? Are you with me?
Yeah.
You didn't think it was that bad?
Rivers might be a little extreme.
It was dripping.
Yeah, I had puffy eyes.
No.
Okay, continue.
Oh my God. So it was a little bit rough. And I don't know. I mean, what did I do? I meditated more. I just meditated
that
more,
seems like
searched more.
A contrary course of action.
Well, I had tried already. We've already told, the other part of the story that I tried everything. I had tried everything to get you to stop eating that, and to also the coffee, with the 3 ad shots, the venti Starbucks with 3 ad shots. So I tried, and it wasn't working. And the only place I had to go was within. And so I dealt with it in a spiritual manner, by meditating and by releasing. And then when I actually got to the point where I received the teachings from the Indian master that I was studying with, who proposed to me what is divine love, and that divine love is simply like the sun. It doesn't judge, and it doesn't discriminate. So I became very aware that the sun was shining as much on you, even with everything you were doing, as it was on me doing meditating and eating healthy and all of that. And so I just let it go. And I basically turned it over to God. I was like, all right, I'm out. So I'm going to stop.
By out, you don't mean I'm out of the relationship. You mean I'm out of like
micromanaging,
this desire to have it
right.
change.
Yeah, grasping or needing you to self-realize this lifetime, or needing you to find your spirituality. I had to trust that a higher power had placed us together, and that if I was an emanation of God, then you were an emanation of God. And then all I had to do was put my devotion on that energy and release you to your life, release you to your process, and allow you to go through that. And if that meant that you were eating that way, then that's what I allowed, or I observed, and I stayed completely out of it with no judgment and no anger.
Yeah, and that's, I've said it many times, and this is, I talk about it in my talks, but, it was that releasing of energy that shifted the dynamic. Like, I could sense that, and I could feel it, and that's what flipped the mirror and made me realize, like, oh, something's different. Like, she's not pressing me to be different. Like, because I think that energy of sort of coming at me with, do this, change this, from whatever reason in my life history or in my baggage, would like push buttons, and my impulse is to, when somebody does that to me, is to go in the opposite direction or shut down. And when that was gone, and I realized that was no longer the energy, that allowed me to then take responsibility for these decisions for myself. Because for the first time, I had to kind of grapple with the idea of what I wanted, or what I wanted, what I wanted for my own life, as opposed to, a decision to be made to placate another human being.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to have to pause this.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's right. So we're good.
I feel much better. Do you also, I wanted to point out, like, there's a weird humming noise, like there's a weird buzzing noise. So apologies if that's bothering people.
I don't think
there's
people can
There's
hear
a
it.
Fan overhead in the office where we're recording this, and I tried for the life of me to figure out how to turn it off so we could have better sound, but I couldn't. So sorry about that. You just have to bear with it. All right. So where were we?
No, so I just think that also I'm going to jump into another part of Jeremy's question, which is relevant right now. And that is, he was asking, what role does commitment play in this entire scenario that we're talking about and in relationships? And I want to point out that I don't really think we could have done the work that we've done if we didn't have a very firm commitment that we both understood at a very deep level. So I think that's one element. Like I think if I was in a relationship with someone that I wasn't sure if they were leaving, like if they were out the door like any second, I don't know how deep you can go, because it's not safe then. You can't really explore these edges or, unveil these dark parts of yourself without really knowing that the commitment was there. And so I think on that, after we had that episode in February of 2005 or 2004, where you were, you left for a 24-hour period. It was tragic. We were both devastated, which was great. But, after that, I think we really, we made the commitment. I mean, we were committed before, but we remade the commitment that we are in a relationship, and that we value that boundary and that protection and that commitment, very, very sacredly.
Well, I think that episode was important in order to, affirm that, because when I left, I really had to reflect on, like, do I want to be in this relationship? Is this not going to work? Is it going to work? Like, what am I willing to do to make it work? Because the possibility existed that we could go in different directions. I mean, that was very real in that moment, right? And so upon reflection, I realized, no, I want to be in this. So when I returned, and I think the feeling was the same on your part, like, okay, we're in, like, we're in for whatever. And I think, knowing that we were going to stand by each other no matter what, and whatever our differences were, that we were going to commit to working through them, created that safe place, right? Because I think a lot of people are in relationships where maybe it doesn't feel so safe, or they're not so sure, where they stand, how firm is that ground. And when that exists, it's very easy to, withhold from your partner, right? And if you're withholding, then that is obviously, going to decay the level of intimacy, right? And that's an erosion that may start with a grain of sand, but can soon, turn into an avalanche.
Yeah, I think it's very, very, very important. It's an important element to a relationship to have that commitment. So I think that was definitely working in our favor.
But you can't, somebody can't manufacture that. Like, that has to be, both people have to be in, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So does that answer his question?
He just said, what role do we think commitment plays in a relationship? I mean, I can only speak from my experience. I mean, I can hypothesize about what it might be for someone else who was in a relationship with someone who had commitment issues, but I don't have any experience with that. So I can't really speak to that. Do you have an experience with that, or no?
Yeah, maybe that's for another podcast,
okay.
I suppose, because that could go down into the weeds.
Okay, and then another question Jeremy was asking is, how similar do two people's values need to be, and what does that look like? Like, how similar? I mean, for us in our relationship, in some ways, in kind of friendship ways and hanging out ways and working together ways, we like the same things. But as individual people, we're very different. So how does that work?
Well, I think first you have to define what you mean by values. Like, are we talking about, are we talking about your, I suppose that means, what's important to you, right? But, if somebody's value system is completely different, then that's probably not going to work. Like, if you just take an extreme example, somebody who is a militant revolutionary and somebody who is in the Tea Party,
right? Exactly.
I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? So I think, as you kind of cross that divide and get closer, then it becomes more and more difficult how you parse out a difference in values. But I think it's important that you share at least some core kind of perspective on what you want out of your life, right? You have to be moving in the same direction.
I think if somebody analyzed us, or if we actually broke it down, we would see that we have the same core values. We have the exact same core values, like, family, commitment, committed relationship, integrity, creativity, transformation, spiritual practice. But the way that we do those things is very different.
Right. I mean, you're an incredibly different person than I am in the way you kind of deal with your day. You know, you're somebody who is like when I met you, like you were doing a million different things, right? You were like, I'm an artist, I'm a yogi, I'm a meditator, I like to paint and I like to sculpt and I was a fashion designer and I do this and I do that. And I was like, how does that even work? Like I never met anyone who was such a multidisciplinarian, and my experience in my life was all predicated on you do one thing. Like I go all in on like one thing, and that's who you are. You define yourself by, you know, as a man, your career path, and I'm a lawyer, and this is what I do. And the idea that you could do more than one thing, it never occurred to me. Like that was a broadening of my horizon. So you could, I guess, characterize that as a difference in values, but I don't really think it's a difference in values. It's just a different way of.
I think it's a different approach.
Yeah, a different approach to your life, and I found that to be attractive. I was like, I could use a little bit of that in my life. You know what I mean? And I'm somebody who's very structured and very organized and very kind of diligent in, you know, how I calendar my day, and everything has its neat little place. You know, not to the point of neurosis, but, you know, I find comfort in being scheduled. You know what I mean? Like that structure allows me to
feel safe. Perhaps
feel safe, but also achieve the goals that I've set for myself. Like I feel like I need that, you know, and you're somebody who doesn't operate well with that. And we don't really clash over it, but we have to recognize that we function differently. Like I can't, there's no way that I could get you to operate the way that I do on a day-to-day basis. Like that's never going to work. Like if you look at Julie's desk and you look at my desk, it's like two different species. You know what I mean? In the way that you kind of, you know, a desk is is kind of character revealing, right? Like how somebody organizes their desk says a lot about, you know, how they deal with their day, or how they, you know, I don't know, navigate the world, right? So my desk is very different than your desk.
What does your desk look like?
Very organized and very, you know, everything it's in its nice little place.
I file once a year whether I need it or not.
We're in the process of like doing a little spring cleaning in July, like because of what Julie said before. Like we just accumulate all this junk, right? So we have these purges every once in a while, and I just packed up like 4 hefty bags of clothes and took them to Goodwill, and I'm just trying to live like more minimally, right? Like we just accumulate all this stuff. And so Julie was experiencing the same thing, and she started going through all of her paperwork, and I walked up into the bedroom the other day and there was literally like paper covering the entire floor, and she's like, yeah, I'm getting organized. I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, how do you even get to that point where the paperwork is such a disaster that it's spread out over the entire room? But you were like totally comfortable in that, whereas that would make me insane.
Well, I was cleaning it up. I mean, I was in the middle of the clean. It's not like I left it that way.
But it was prior to that. It was in the closet. It
was just in
like
a stack,
4 foot high stack. And you're like, you seem to always know where everything is. And I'd be like, "Where's that thing about that?" "Oh, it's upstairs in the closet in the thing." And I'm like, I can't even begin to. There's no way I'm going to find what's in there. Like I couldn't. I was like, I don't know how you function that way.
Right.
But we could fight about it. But you're not gonna change, and I'm not gonna change. We just function differently, which is why, like when we spoke about this the other week too. But when we did that Crosscast podcast with James Altucher and Claudia, his wife, and we were talking about you know, working together, like they work professionally together, as do we. But they spend all their time, they're like attached at the hip, like 18 hours a day. And that would not work for us, right? So because we recognize that we have a different way, like we do things differently, and that's okay. It's not a reflection on our level of intimacy. It's just what functions best for us.
Yeah, it's true. And it can make things interesting, and it can make things, you can also learn from different perspectives. And I mean, I learned from you, I strive to be more organized and
do you strive?
I do sometimes, occasionally.
Yeah. But that's not a core value.
No,
right?
That's not a core value. That's an approach. Right. That's just an approach.
So I think it's being able to differentiate between, a core value, I suppose, would be something about how you live your life that is very important to you, right?
Yeah. And I would say that one of the core values that's very important to us is a committed, deep, intimate relationship. because if it wasn't, we wouldn't have stayed together.
Right. So if one of us was into like being a swinger and the
right,
other one
that
was
wouldn't
into
work.
being, like, yeah, that would be a core value that wouldn't work.
That wouldn't work very well. Yeah, and I mean the other thing, and the reason that I corrected when you said, the financial is the interesting thing about our transformation, and what people come up to me all the time, and people that know us, that were our friends, that were close, is they almost can't fathom that the amount of financial duress we went through did not break our family apart and break Rich and I apart, but it actually didn't. We never fought over that because we knew that was just a symptom of the spiritual transformation that we were going through. And we knew that, it wasn't your job to be my source, and it wasn't my job to be your source. We were going outside of our physical selves and connecting with something greater than our human selves to try to connect with a deep life purpose that was buried inside our heart. And that was complicated because we were set up in life a certain way. And so there was like a train moving, and when you stop the train, there's a wreck, there's a pileup, when you stop it suddenly. So it wasn't easy to navigate, but I was never angry. I was never angry with you for the choices that we decided as a couple, and I know you were not angry with me. And what it did is it created this solidarity, this tremendous commitment, and this bonding, where we were kind of together through our own self-created war in a way.
Right. I mean, I think that, as I began to kind of struggle existentially with like what I was supposed to be doing with my life, and kind of came to this crossroads with being a lawyer and realizing like, this is not what I should be doing, and bringing that to you, you were like, then don't do it anymore. Like, let's do something else. Like, you were able to see certain aspects of my character that I couldn't see clearly, and you helped me channel that. Like, why don't you, I was like, I wrote a screenplay like every other idiot in Los Angeles, right? But we directed a movie,
we made a movie together.
We made a movie.
It's
like,
pretty cool.
I tried a lot of different things, and you were always a support to that. So I think, perhaps what might be behind this question is something that we get a lot of, which is, one person in the relationship is interested in personal growth or health or whatnot, and the other person isn't. And so is there a core value difference there? Like, if the other partner isn't interested in that, are they still supportive, or are they just saying, why are you doing that? Come back to me, in the sense that you might have said, what do you mean you're not going to be a lawyer? Like, you got to go back and this is what you do, right? Like, that would have been a core value,
right,
that would have come, that we would have clashed over, that could have, led us in a very different direction. So you were always somebody that I think what I'm getting at is that it's important to be open, right? Like, so I think being in your presence allowed me to see that perhaps there were more options for me, that I didn't have to stay in this career, because I saw you doing so many other things, and that allowed me to entertain the possibility that I might be able to do some other things as well. And then when that kind of spark, was lit, then you were able to be supportive of that, outside, an analysis of how that was going to impact us financially.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was all about, because for me, it's about, the life is about realizing what's in your heart in an authentic way. And so if I believe
that's a core value,
exactly.
Right. So if on the other side of that, a core value would be, we need to have, a vacation home in the Hamptons, and we need to be able to, drive a Tesla, and all these sorts of trappings of, our culture, and getting caught up in status and materialism. If that was one person's focus, that would be a core value in conflict with your core value.
Yes. Yeah, true.
That wouldn't work, right?
Yeah. And I remember one time you feeling incredible guilt that you could not provide the vacation for the kids for spring break. And I remember saying to you that the example that you were setting by braving this terrain and carving this new life out for yourself was a greater example, would transform their life and affect them in a positive way, 1,000,000 times beyond any vacation you could buy them.
Right. And I had a difficulty believing that at the time. And I think in part that's because our sense, as men, our idea of who we are, our sense of masculinity is innately, sort of related to our ability to provide. So if you're struggling with your ability to provide, basically that is undercutting your identity as a man, right? And that's a very painful place to be. Very painful place to be. And I know that that's a place that a lot of men are in, and they suffer quietly. Like they don't have anyone to talk to about that, or they don't have a support system or a partner who can help them navigate that without feeling minimized in the process.
Right. And I think that as women, I mean, we're talking about, women and men in relationships, but I think that, it could also be other kinds of relationship, two women or two men. So, but I think within the relationship, there's an opportunity for, again, us to realize that the other partner is not our source. It is not their job to provide for us, to provide, physical comforts. Our source is much greater, much, much, much greater. And, to the extent that we're playing a part in that violence, we need to stop it. Because if you just shift your awareness and view it from the perspective of, what if your partner was your child? And would you want your child to be, exposed to, some expectation that was not serving the best of his heart expression, and would you like your child's life to be, confined or, summarized to, to someone else's need for security or for upkeep, I guess I would say. So, in our modern world, we've become accustomed to certain things that we think are absolutely required for our existence, and not that many of them are really required. And if you're lucky enough to be graced to go through a dismantling, it will not be easy. So don't mistake my words for that. I think that it's easy. But the blessing is great because you finally become free of the money system, and you realize that there is a greater force that is your source. And as you learn to connect to that and learn to drop a lot of the other illusions, you will see time and time again how you are supported in living your heart when you make decisions from integrity, from alignment, from authenticity. You will be answered, and you will see that upheld.
It's a huge leap of faith, and it's certainly been our experience. But I think that what happens is, people hear that and they say, well, that's great, but, my rent's due next week, and, I can't leave my job because there aren't any other jobs, and I hate my job, but at least I have a job, and, I need my health insurance, and, so good luck to you, but, I can't see how I can actually implement that into my own personal circumstances.
Yeah, but, anybody can say that. I mean, everybody has the same amount of hours in the day, okay? So, if you've got 2 legs and 2 arms and you can walk and you can talk and you can think, you have the exact same opportunity. So the level of pressure and the dark night that I had to navigate with my family and what I had to go through with you in support was no small task. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to act like it was like I had it easy, or, is 9 years an easy amount of time for me to stand by and say, we're going to do this? That's a long time. So,
yeah, no, I'm saying that has been our experience. I'm just saying how people interpret that, because I think they project onto us a different idea of how it went down, and I don't, it's difficult to appreciate just how excruciating it was for an incredibly extended period of time. And, to somebody who, feels stuck in their job and feels like they can't leave and they have bills that are due, like I empathize with that, and it doesn't mean, what we're not saying is, this faith-based path doesn't require you to overnight quit your job and just say, I'm not doing that anymore and I'm not playing this game anymore. Like it was 9 years of us trying to traverse that gap. But I think it began with doing that inside work and getting in touch with, going on that journey of trying to discover and unlock like what it is that we wanted to do and be and connecting with our heart in that way and finding a way, very clumsily to express that, before it really took shape and form to be what it is now.
Well, and it wasn't a guaranteed thing, first of all. Okay.
It was the furthest thing.
The furthest thing from
guaranteed.
a guaranteed. Yeah. So it wasn't like, it wasn't graceful and we weren't able to plan it out, perfectly. And of course, everybody's journey is going to be completely different because it's a different individual. But by practicing meditation and getting clear about, what is living in your heart, what is yearning to be expressed, and, what are the things that you can shift in your life, immediately that don't require, a complete dismantling. The other thing, though, is that you'll find if you've stepped out onto the trail, the trail has its own terrain and it has its own personality, and you can't control that. Mm-hmm. So it basically dictates what is going to happen, and your challenge is the way you meet it. Your transformation is, not what happens to you, but who are you in the face of what happens to you. So, Jeremy asked later in the email, what was your lowest point? And it makes me giggle because it was like, which low point would you like me to point out? There were many, 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 many points where we were, literally on our knees just going, did we just completely, make a wrong turn? And is this whole thing just for naught? So again, it required faith. It required continually recommitting to each other, recommitting to our hearts over and over and over again, getting more clear, disconnecting from the status quo, letting go of any attachment to, old paradigm ideas, like credit scores, just health insurance or, car leases, like things like that. And things that, we thought that we had enough energy that those things should have been taken care of. Like we didn't understand why those things, were not taken care of.
But you show up. I mean, the journey will dictate what it's going to be. But the one thing that you do is you show up for it every day.
Yeah. And
whatever capacity that may be for you. Maybe that's just between the hours of 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. every night,
mm-hmm.
When you're home from your 9 to 5 job or whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
in whatever way that you can show up for yourself to participate in that journey and detaching from, the results of whatever your efforts are, I think is essential. Like, as if you're doing it because you have an expectation of a certain result, then you're
in big trouble.
You're going to be frustrated and most likely disappointed.
That's right. No, it's true. And I mean, we were talking to somebody. We met a fellow dismantler warrior on the plane, actually, on the way back from our latest trip. And I was describing to him about how it became it was basically a spiritual challenge. The whole financial collapse for me. That's definitely how I met it. So I tried to maintain an inner environment inside myself of complete neutrality no matter what was happening. And I started to observe myself and see how I could lessen any cortisol spike to almost nothing, no matter what was occurring in front of me. And I got to be pretty adept at it at the end.
Yeah, that's a huge skill. There are certain things to this day that I have, like, that I still struggle with that I shouldn't because it's imagined, whether it's like opening a letter from the IRS or, answering a certain phone call that like caused me to get imbalanced. And so that challenge of like being able to meet anything in total neutrality is like a superpower.
It is. And I always describe it like, you know, you don't see a Jedi warrior like losing their shit. Like, oh no, like, oh my God, this person called me and I got to call him back. You know, it's like they don't waver off that neutral point. Your power is in neutral, loving compassion, in clarity. You're seeing what's going on around you and you're maintaining your inner power, your inner neutrality. So no matter what's happening, if you can reduce your level of freak out to almost nothing, then that energy will leave. It will go away because there's nothing to play with anymore. That is a very great key. And that should be applied every moment of your day in every single thing. And sometimes we get lazy because we're back in, you know, life is just going as it does. And then someone takes your parking space, and then you participate in that really stupidity of getting, you know, when you really look at it as an energetic use, you know, it's using fuel, using your energy, why you would get involved in being irritated or resentful or angry or fighting or anything over something like that. It's not wise.
Yeah, well, it's preposterous when you look at it from 10,000 feet down, but that is our condition, right? That's our human condition that our challenge is to meet and overcome. Right?
And it's a choice.
So all right, well, I think this is a good place to wind it all down, but if somebody's listening and they're like, I want that superpower, what is the journey towards accessing that superpower?
Be careful what you ask for. If you want that superpower, then you have to be willing to go through the experiences to develop it.
Yeah,
because you can't read about it in a book and get it. But you can play with it. So the next time something happens that, you know, that you consider to be a threat to your existence, I guess. Whether
why don't you start with something small, you know, like and try to gauge how you. I mean, first you have to be self-aware enough to know when you're reacting impulsively to a situation, but you know, start with the parking space and then say, okay, that guy took my parking space. I have an opportunity here to be totally neutral about that rather than do what I usually do, which is like get all pissed off.
Right. I mean, I was saying that kind of tongue in cheek that, you know, that we sort of go through our life and sort of every little thing, you know, is a reason for us to get, you know, ruffled and all this. And if you just start to view life that it's a movie, that it's happening and that different people are playing different roles and that your power is in neutral observance, and then maybe beyond that, loving compassion, and start to play with it and observe what is your blood pressure doing, you know, when that person that irritates you, you know, calls you or takes your parking space, or the person at the cashier isn't fast enough, or, you know, the bank's closed. Like, look at, it's all happening with inside of you, and, you know, try to model a Jedi warrior and put yourself in that situation. And remember that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control who you are in the face of what happens to you. And so it's all between you and you. So if you want to be an idiot who's like screaming, jumping around in the parking lot, you know, yelling at a fire hydrant, then go ahead.
That's me.
Go ahead and do that. But it's more of an awareness and to understand that, you know, we're talking about health and longevity. So according to Swami Vidyadishananda, His Holiness, cortisol and insulin spike is the key to longevity. So if you want to live a long life, don't spike your insulin. What does that mean? Don't spike your cortisol. Don't get emotional, out of balance, you know, freaking out. That's aging you and it's killing you. So you should keep in mind, this is why I'm always saying meditation, 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 breathing, 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 yoga, yoga, yoga.
Well, that's the way to cultivate that superpower, because you really are able to, even if it's just that added moment before reacting where you have a conscious awareness enough to make a different decision, right? In recovery, they call it contrary action. Like, for me, it's like, what would I normally do in this situation, and then doing the opposite as almost an experiment. And I know many, many times you'll go into these situations knowing that, okay, this is traditionally stressful and doesn't really produce the result that I want, but I'm gonna do an experiment, like whether it's like, oh, we got to call AT&T and find out, how we can change our service plan, and then you go into the morass of like customer service and getting, which drives me insane. And you'll be like, I'm gonna play a game with this person, right? And do it and treat them with respect and compassion, but also be completely neutral with whatever they say to you, whether it's dealing with going through security at the airport or whatever it is. Like those situations, which usually are very kind of disruptive to me. They kind of like push my buttons and get me crazy. That's why I always have you handle this stuff for me. But to say, okay, I'm going to go into this, with a conscious awareness of what's happening and handle it differently than I have in the past. And then do an inventory of the results, right? Like, oh, when I handled it this way, I actually got the result that I was looking for all along. And I did it because I divorced myself from needing it or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. That's a good practice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I should actually try to
You should try that one. You should try to practice what you preach.
I know.
No.
I wasn't preaching it. I was explaining it.
I was just using that. I was just using that.
But you're very, very good at that, and I have a lot to learn about that. Like I watch that and I'm like, wow, look what she just did. I don't know if I could do that,
Well, I mean, I think the level of big things that we went through was great, and it's just especially don't be spiking your insulin over small stuff.
Well, spiking your insulin, your insulin is released by your pancreas into your bloodstream when you put sugar into your blood. That's very different than cortisol.
They're two different things.
But
They're
spiking your
things.
Insulin is contingent upon the food that you're eating.
Right.
Not your
That's true.
emotional
You're
state.
right. Yeah.
Okay?
That's true.
So just to be clear on that.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Well, I think we gotta wind it down here. It's an hour and a half. Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
Are we done with Jeremy's questions?
Let me see.
Did we answer them fully? He got a lot of airtime today. I always print out like a whole stack of questions, and then we end up spending an hour and a half on one or two questions. So I guess
there's one more.
What's that?
Do we seek outside advice for our relationship?
Not in the traditional sense that I think he's asking. Like, we don't go to a therapist.
No.
Right? But, I have people in my life that I can call when I'm, needing counsel on a variety of matters, whether that's my marriage or any number of things, right? So I think it's important for everybody to have people in their life that they trust, whose advice that they trust, people that are living lives that, you aspire to have, that you can call and run things by. Right. Yeah,
but for you, it's your program community.
Yeah.
So
these are people in recovery
who have a spiritual practice.
Right. And then I have like a board of advisors, right? So I have people that I call for this issue and different people that I call for that issue. When it's a relationship thing, I know certain people that I can call. If it's a business thing, there are other people that I can call. And I think everybody would be well advised to have those kinds of people in their life. Like, I think, recovery has really taught me to embrace the idea of not knowing. Like, it's okay to not know. It's okay to not know the answer to something. And it's okay to ask people for help, which is very difficult for me. It's sort of, as men too, it's like you have to know the answer to everything, and you should know the answer to everything. And if you don't, then you're weak, right? But that's not the case. And even very mundane decisions, like sometimes I'll run them by people, like, what would you do? Do you think this is a good decision or a bad decision? And more often than not, like, I will course correct. Like, I'll do something different than I originally intended, when I kind of poll my advisors and get a consensus one way or the other. And I think that that's, a healthy practice for anybody. But we don't go together and seek out sort of advice, the two of us, for our relationship specifically.
And from my perspective, I do not speak about our relationship to outside people. Usually.
Except on the podcast, too.
Except right now,
Hundreds
to
of
your
thousands of
millions of people. I don't do that. It's like with sacred spiritual experiences. It's like you guard them. It's like the speaking. if I'm speaking about it, I'm making sure that I'm not speaking in a negative way about it, because the processing it in a negative way can can increase that and make that actually more amplified. Mm-hmm. This has been my experience with couples therapy, and, it's just my experience, but in my experience, couples therapy has been not useful because it's two people sitting in a room telling a third person on the other person who's sitting there. And I find that triangulation of energy to be very destructive. So for me, I'm an advocate of therapy, but I think it's one-on-one is where the real work happens. Maybe a couple. For me, again, this is my experience. So if people are getting help from from couples therapy, then that's fine. But for me, maybe it would be a strategizing meeting where it was a couple with one therapist. But I think ultimately when the real work begins, it has to be solo. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's been my experience. Yeah, but we've never gone to see a counselor together.
I think the other thing to be aware of too, specific to relationship quandaries that arise, is it's easy to you can cultivate your story about whatever conflict you're in with your partner, and then take that to your friend and tell that story in a way that makes you sound very right and the other person wrong. And then that person your friend will of course say, well, of course you're right, and blah, blah, blah. And it kind of devolves into a gossipy, kind of thing that I don't think is productive. So I think that's part of what you were saying about how, not sharing about your relationship because it can turn into that. So I think the way in which you communicate to a, quote unquote mentor or somebody that, is a repository of good advice for you, I think you have to be very conscious about how you're communicating your dilemma to that person, and to strive to be as objective as possible about that. And that requires you to do an inventory of your own behavior and identify where your character's defects or your behavior is contributing to whatever scenario, whatever dynamic that you find yourself in.
Yeah, and I think you have to, be careful of who you're speaking to, because if you value your relationship and you need to treat it with a lot of respect and a lot of care and a lot of reverence, really. Mm-hmm. So I would be very careful to just discuss it with anyone or any family member. It would be somebody who I valued highly, and I felt that they. I knew that they really had my best interest and our best interest at heart.
All right. Well, we got to close it down.
That's it, honey.
How do you feel about today?
Couldn't do it again in 12 years.
Is it good? Couldn't do what?
This podcast.
Another podcast. We're going to wait 12 years.
On our relationship.
All right. Yeah. So we got through one question today.
That's good.
Whoops. Yeah, so anyway, I got a whole stack here. That's the good news. We'll have more to talk about. And I wanted to close it down with a fan letter. I thought it would be nice to read a fan letter. Remember last week I tried to, but I didn't print it out properly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome.
So this is from Jason. It goes on long, so I'm going to edit it. But he says, I wanted to reach out to you and say thanks for all that you do and the amazing impact you have had on my life in such a short time span. To be honest, back in April, I had never heard your name, but nutrition is my absolute passion, and my wife will occasionally send me bits of information through email that she thinks will interest me. She sent an article from Mind Body Green, and after some digging, I came across an article you wrote in regards to protein. I know, the beloved protein question. Well, needless to say, from that moment on, I have dove headstrong into your journey, and it has given me the direction I was looking for. I have somewhat of a similar story to yours, and as I had an awakening when I turned 40, I just turned 45 last week, and have traveled a long road since pursuing this topic to amazing results. Whoops, sorry, I hit the send. This came in 2 emails. He hit send by accident. Anyway, I've been attempting to gain as much knowledge in the world of nutrition as possible, and you are exactly what I was looking for. I am now halfway through your book, Finding Ultra, which my wife gave me for my birthday, along with the Plant Power Way. I purchased and watched your video series with Julie on eating a plant-based diet, and I'm through 45 episodes of your podcast. I've been an athlete all my life, soccer player and now coach, but running was never a high activity on my list. I started walking and running with my wife and have now found a completely different outlook on it. I do have an issue with my knee after going to my family doctor and not receiving an answer that I was satisfied with. I decided to take a different route. we live in XYZ. I don't know if he wants people to know where we live. And our son is going to film school this next year in Hollywood after spending his freshman year at College X. I heard your podcast with Dr. Shani, and I have set up an appointment to see him next week when we are there to take our son to start school. I have and am extremely hopeful he can find a solution to getting me back out there. Another impact you have made is in regards to your podcast with the two gentlemen from the school in New York that have done work at their school to change the culture in regards to nutrition. I'm a PE teacher, athletic director at a K-8 charter school, and after hearing the podcast, know that I have to at least give it a shot at making some sort of similar impact on our school. When I get back from my trip to California, I'm going to contact them and see if they can give some advice on where to start and the best approach to having success. We are starting a school garden when we get back from summer break, so that will definitely be a good start to build off. I could write so much more about your positive impact, but I know you get plenty of these emails, so I won't blah, 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 blah. My entire family is now plant-powered, and we have never felt better. I am absolutely drawn to the ocean and beaches, so my wife and I do plan on moving back to California at some point in the near future. Thanks for all you do, and keep up the great work on the podcast. I am enriched every time I listen, and I'm excited to see the direction you take in the future. So that's amazing, right? This guy wrote this like really long, beautiful
fantastic
letter. And we do get a lot of these, and it's impossible to reply to them by email, but I thought it would be nice to read one, and thank you very much for sending that. And I appreciate all of the amazing letters that you guys are sending. So please keep
thanks so
them.
much for all the beautiful messages that we get. It's just incredibly it's continually blowing our minds on a daily basis. So
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. So that's it. Thanks for subscribing to the show on iTunes. Thank you for telling your friends, for sharing it on social media. Thank you for using the Amazon banner ad at richroll.com for all your Amazon purchases. And let's see, we got a couple appearances coming up. We just got back from the Vegetarian Summerfest. That was fun. September 11th through 15th, we're going to be in Telluride at the Integrative Wellness Summit. Then September 25th through 27th, we're going to be in Las Vegas. I'm speaking at the Life is Beautiful Music and Art Festival there. And then October 3rd, we're going to be in D.C. I'm speaking at the D.C. Veg Fest, and got more appearances coming up. I know I'm going to be in Atlanta in November. I'm not sure.
We haven't confirmed yet.
We have a couple other things that are working out. So keep sending your questions for future Q&A podcasts to info@richroll.com. I am looking for a web-based way of better organizing all of these questions, and I'll keep you posted on that. And for all your plant power needs, don't forget to go to richroll.com. We got nutrition products. We got Julie's meditation program. We have signed copies of the Plant Power Way and also Finding Ultra. We have 100% organic cotton garments. We have tech tees. We have sticker packs now, awesome sticker packs. And our most recent and interesting product offering are these beautiful art prints by our friend Andrew Pasquella, who is very much a premier upcoming talented artist who's making waves in the art and food movement. He's done a series on the USDA, kind of a modern art take on the USDA label. He's been kind enough to basically make a limited number of these prints available to you guys, which he will sign and number all of them. And I assure you, this guy's art career is blowing up right now. So it's a great way to access and own a beautiful piece of art at a very affordable
Yeah, they're
price.
gorgeous.
Right?
They're really cool. You
can get them framed or unframed, and they come in this beautiful cloth paper. It's really nice. It's very, very high end, and they're big. They're 26 by 26. 3-color hand screen prints, the whole deal. All the information is on the website, so you can just go there and
check him out.
Right? And we've got online courses at Mind Body Green, the ultimate course in plant. What is it called?
Ultimate Guide
to
Plant-Based Nutrition. I think that's what it's called.
That's what it's called. And what's the other one called?
Isn't it something about living your most authentic self?
Something about goal setting.
Living with purpose.
No, it's called. What is it called?
I don't know. It's bad. I can't even remember the name of your own program.
I know, but it's all about the inside work.
Whatever. It's about the inside work.
There.
It's living with purpose, something
like that.
Something like that.
You can find it. Go to mindbodygreen.com and click on video courses. Actually, really proud of those courses. I'm just having a brain fart right now about what it's called.
Me too, obviously.
Anyway, all right, that's it, you guys. If you want to connect with Julie, she's at Srimati, Srimati, on both Twitter and Instagram. Her website is srimati.com. Follow her. She's offering all kinds of pearls of wisdom and beautiful photographs on her Instagram.
Thank you.
And are we going to take this out with one of your songs?
I think we will, yeah.
What is it going to be this time?
It's going to be I'm Here Now.
I'm Here Now.
It's a love song that I wrote for a couple gurus of mine. And then it became about you and the kids.
All right. Have we played that one on the podcast before?
A long time ago, I think.
All right, good. All right, that's it.
All right, so it's been beautiful being with you. Thanks for an amazing relationship, rich roll.
Thank you. To another 12 years, perhaps.
Here we go. We'll see.
We'll see what happens, right?
Okay.
All right. Peace. Plants.
Namaste.